Ancient History by Johnny Nobise. Today's topic we're going to focus on. Yes. Today's topic we'll focus on the ancient history, the sculpture, the buildings, and the culture of the old history, of the old country. It was made back then, way back in the 100, like way back in the old centuries ago. If it was first century, second century, third century BC, or 4th century BC, and then we have AD as well in this history. Now let's see from here on out. So we're going to be reading today's topic. We're going to start from here, guys. The Ancient Fair, International Museum, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. The ancient history, as the term refers to a larger past events. What do I mean by past events? If it was from the past, or it's not too sure. From the past, from the beginning of writing and recording human history, and then extending as far as the post-classical history. The phrase may be used either to refer to the period of time or the automatic discipline, the span of the recorded history for roughly 5,000 years. The beginning of the summary and the confirmed script. The oldest was discovered from the Caribbean writing from the pro-tolerant period around the 30th century BC. 30th century. Ancient history covers all the continents inhabited by humans in the 3000 BC, 500 AD period. The broad term ancient history is not to be confused with classical inequality. The term classical inequality is often used to refer the Western history and the ancient Mediterranean from the beginning of recorded Greek history in 776 BC. First appropriate Ilopiad. This roughly coincides with the traditional date of the founding of Rome in 753 BC. The beginning of history of ancient Rome. The beginning of Abrahamic period in ancient Greece. The Abrahamic term history is not to be confused with the colonial refuges of times past. History formality is the study of the past through documents and can be referred to scientific archaeology or humanistic history through language. Wow, this was a long time. Anybody could be an archaeology and archaeologist as well. Humanistic history through language. This can be taught from the past. Very interesting, guys. Let's take a look. Let's take a look at what ancient cultures, ancient history, ancient culture. This is back then. The ancient cultures for here are ancient China or Greece, Egypt, India, Persia, Mesopotamia, and Rome. The cultures of the art, ancient world, long time. A long time before we was even born in this world. Now, these people back then were there. They built a lot of sculptures, statues. Written systems, arts of the ancient world refers to the main types of art that were the cultures of ancient Socrates, such as those of ancient China, Egypt, Greece, India, Persia, Mesopotamia, and Rome. What is the oldest culture in the world? We got the Persian civilization, ancient Greek civilization, Chinese civilization, Mayan civilization, ancient Egyptian civilization, Indus Valley civilization, Mesopotamian civilization. Let's look up about the Indus Valley civilization. What is that? The Indus Valley. Just yet. That one is an interesting one. We got into philosophy on this one. Valley civilization. Many years ago, centuries ago, this was here still. Sculptures, the decoration of the art. Decorations. This was so good, guys. Indus Valley civilization. like this monster really looking at this so old. He's trying to hurt your eyes because it's so old. You can't even look at it because it's so old. It makes you think that these things are like creepy. These cultures. I say it's creepy and cool. As a history person, I have to study all of this history. Now, let's look at something that we haven't discussed outside of the Europe in 550 to 500 450 through 500 times. Time frame in the end of ancient times has had difficulty in transmitting flow of ancient to the past classical times. So looking at one of these sculptures, so this one, ancient Hebrew culture, we have ancient Egyptian culture, we have the Greek culture, we have the Roman Colosseum. That's the Roman Colosseum. The Greeks, ancient Greece. I know that's when the earthquake used to destroy this city. That's why now I think it's still broken. If you go to this place, if you fly to Greece as an American, if you want to fly to Greece to learn language, if you see this tower, if you see this what's it called, the Greek temple is gonna be looking all cracked up. I think it's because of the earthquake. I'm not sure if it's broken down. Well, that's really interesting. Let's see. This is the Chinese culture. Chinese. I'm thinking when it comes to Chinese culture, it's too deep. It's very interesting. Also, I like the wall of China. It's very cool. What the heck is this, man? Did they just made it? Or that's just a joke or something. It's like you see Spider-Man and you see the wings. I think that's Green Goblin. But these are the ancient cultures. Ancient culture. Medieval history. I've been studying a lot. Oh boy. Now let's see with them. India. You have the Egyptian culture again. Dancing. Egyptian culture, dancing in ancient Egypt. on the archaeology ways.
World was properly divided. Hi, it's Mike Jet. Before the world was properly divided into countries and cities, before ships and airplanes allowed us to easily travel from one continent to another, there were ancient civilizations that thrived in ways none of us could even fathom. But for reasons still unknown, they simply vanished. And archaeologists the world over are still scrambling to find out why. So in this video, we're going to cover the top 5 civilizations that mysteriously vanished. Number 5, the Indus Valley Civilization. It was the most widespread of the big 3 civilizations of the old world, along with Mesopotamia and ancient Egypt. It had a highly urbanized territory with at least 100 cities that were so well mapped out, it was considered more superior than some contemporary civilizations. And yet, no one can confirm what happened to its over 5 million people. The Indus Valley, or Harappa civilization, was first discovered in 1921 in Harappa at the Punjab region. Its territory is said to span across parts of India, Pakistan, Afghanistan, and Iran. Excavations show this civilization existed as early as 5000 BCE and rose to its peak at around 2500 to 2000 BCE. They enjoyed advanced city life, with communities well equipped with bathrooms, wells, and underground drainage systems, among others. Although self-sufficient, academics found Sumerian documents proving that they had some sort of commercial and religious contact with the Near East, which is said to have stopped around 1800 BC, the estimate time of their decline. One theory says that the Indus Valley's decline was caused by a massive Aryan migration, which was then considered an invasion. Archaeologists never found any evidence to say that the peaceful Harappans ever had a military or even arms to defend their city, and so they might have easily been overpowered by the Aryans. However, one glaring fact disputes this claim. The Aryans are estimated to have arrived at the Indus Valley around 1500 BCE, 300 years after the Harappa civilization is said to have disappeared. Some historians argue that the more possible cause was climate change. They say continuous rain caused the Saraswati River to overflow and flood the surrounding villages. Yet others believe the opposite, that the river actually dried up, removing their main source of water. Researchers have yet to confirm which theory holds true, or if there might have been other reasons for Harappa's decline. Although widely found on pottery, amulets, stamp seals, and copper tables, historians have yet to understand their language. And until someone actually deciphered these symbols, the reason for this vibrant civilization's decline will continue to remain a mystery. Number 4, the Khmer Empire. From 802 CE to 1431 CE, this great empire ruled over most of Southeast Asia. At its peak, it spanned much of Cambodia, Laos, Thailand, and southern Vietnam. Back in the 7th century, the Great Mekong River, the 7th longest in Asia, was surrounded by various territories and small kingdoms that were always at war with each other. This was until a man named Jayavarman II led a series of campaigns that vanquished these petty kingdoms and united them into one powerful empire. The empire built its capital in Angkor and continually expanded throughout the years. They were great builders and are widely known for creating monumental temples, the greatest of which still stands today and is a popular destination for tourists from around the world. The Khmers are also known as genius engineers after successfully creating an extensive network of water control systems to sustain its vast farmlands. That's approximately 3,000 kilometers of canals and reservoirs that took advantage of the Mekong River and the monsoonal climate in the region. Angkor's original name was Yashodharapura, literally meaning glory-bearing city, and at its height, it was the biggest city in the world, close to the size of modern-day Los Angeles. So why did it collapse? No concrete evidence has ever been found to factually answer this question, but researchers believe that interrelated political and natural factors ultimately brought the empire down. Studies show that the empire was constantly concerned with putting down rebellions, mainly from nobles conspiring to take over the crown. It is believed that this internal unrest weakened the empire. On the 3rd spot, the Clovis culture. Named so after the artifacts found near Clovis, New Mexico, they are believed to be the first human inhabitants of the New World who lived around 13,500 years ago. Their remains were first identified in 1932. II. Since then, archaeologists have found numerous Clovis sites across the US, Mexico, and Central America. The most common artifacts found representing this culture is the Clovis point. Distinctive spearheads used to hunt large game. They are indeed regarded as skilled big game hunters and foragers, and archaeologists have actually uncovered several mammoth remains mixed with Clovis points. More than the meat they got from these animals, which could have fed them for weeks, their various parts were also really useful to this ancient culture. Their hides, tusks, bones, and pelts were most probably used for clothing, shelter, and household tools. It is widely believed that mammoths, ground sloths, and giant bisons were already dwindling in numbers during the time of the Clovis culture. The question is whether the people were the actual cause of their total extinction, or was there something else? 12,800 years ago, the Earth underwent an extreme cooling period called the Younger Dryas, which coincided with the extinction of large game animals and the demise of the Clovis people. This is a fact, but what caused this phenomenon is the real mystery. The theory is that a 4-kilometer comet crashed on Earth and ultimately resulted in the huge climate change. This was based on a carbon-rich black layer found on several sites across North America. Number 2, the Olmec civilization. It is Mesoamerica's first great civilization, which thrived along Mexico's Gulf Coast from 1200 to 400 BCE. They had an organized writing system and a calendar that were later adapted by succeeding cultures such as the Mayans and the Aztecs. They were traders and they were able to establish connections with contemporary civilizations across Mesoamerica. Above all, they were excellent stonemasons and sculptors, widely known for carving colossal heads out of huge basalt boulders. Buried for nearly 3,000 years for reasons still unknown, 17 of them have been on Earth from the two most important cities of the Olmec civilization, San Lorenzo and La Venta, which can now be found in the modern-day Mexican states of Veracruz and Tabasco. San Lorenzo is believed to have flourished on a large island by the river from 1200 to 900 BCE. As it was declining, it was then replaced by La Venta, which prospered for another 500 years. In 400 BCE, La Venta collapsed and took the whole civilization with it. So what happened? Scholars have theorized a number of causes: disease, war, famine, natural disasters, and relocation, among many others. Their greatest hypothesis is that human actions combined with natural ecological changes ultimately caused its demise. But since no records or even graves have ever been uncovered, researchers could only theorize. And finally, number 1, the Minoan civilization. Some 2,000 years ago, Plato wrote about Atlantis, a mysterious civilization swallowed by sea, never to be seen again. For 2 millennia, we all thought that was a myth, but archaeologists have uncovered evidence that might answer this mystery. Around 3000 BCE, the Minoan became the first great European civilization, and also created the first ever written European language, now called Linear A. The advanced society of artisans, merchants, and engineers thrived at the Greek island of Crete. They invested highly on maritime trade and defense. They had a great troop of shipbuilders and sailors. The Minoans are said to have been very enigmatic people. They worshipped snake priestesses and engaged in human sacrifice. Their most notable king Minos ruled at the peak of the civilization. His leadership, though great, is clouded with controversy. It is the basis of Greek mythology's Minotaur, a half-bull, half-man that ate human flesh. Historians say that little girls and boys from Athens were often offered as sacrifice. Now, distinguishing the mythological King Minos from the real one has always been a problem for researchers, but what they find more mind-boggling is how this powerful civilization came to an end. Around 1600 BCE, the most powerful volcanic eruption ever witnessed occurred around 100 miles off the island of Crete. Mount Thera's eruption was felt all the way in China, and it changed weather patterns in Greece and neighboring countries for years. Historians believe this explosion caused the sudden demise of the Minoan civilization. The only problem was very few volcanic ashes from the explosion were discovered in Crete. And the more glaring fact is, the Minoan civilization disappeared only some 50 years after Mount Thea's eruption. However, modern studies show that while the explosion did not cause the Minoan civilization's downfall, the aftershocks might have. Uncovered soil sediments could prove that the eastern and northern coasts of Crete were swallowed by waves and waves of 50-meter tsunamis that followed the eruption. Soil samples showed deep-sea microorganisms and species that have no way of making it inland unless a massive flow of water brought them there. And as to why the Minoan culture only disappeared decades later, well, Crete is a big island, and historians say it is highly possible that the tidal waves only eradicated the eastern and northern shores, leaving the rest of the island intact. However, with their maritime fleet gone, the Minoans became easy prey for invaders invaders who took advantage of the island's weakened defenses to finally take over. And now archaeologists are desperate to know whether these new findings have anything to do with Plato and the mythical Atlantis. And the thing with these grand civilizations disappearing is the fact that these are the only ones that we really know of. And throughout all the hundreds of thousands of years of undocumented history, we really have no clue how many civilizations actually thrived and then disappeared. And we have even discovered clues of really advanced ancient civilizations from even millions of years ago. I know that sounds kind of wacky, but guys, check out the evidence for yourself. I'll put some links for you guys in my description box. Thank you all so much for watching this video. I'll see you later.
So we just watched the video. How does a powerful civilization got disappeared? But at least it's a good thing when we get to visit these countries and learn their languages, or you don't have to because they know how to speak English. We get to see all of the statues and the buildings, the sculptures, everything that was built way back in the oldest days. Like you can see, like you can still see it. Even though that it is so old, we still get to see it into this day in the museums or in their countries, still in some areas. So that's really interesting, guys. Really interesting topic. The ancient cultures that history forgot. Life science. As an archaeologist. Civilization. Yeah. You read this? During the period of ancient history, starting roughly from 3000 BC, world population was already extremely increasing due in the Neolithic Revolution, which was in full progress, according to HYDE estimates from the Netherlands. World population increased extremely in this period. In 10,000 BC, in prehistory world, population had stood at 2 million, rising to 45 million by 3000 BC by the rise of the Iron Age, and 1000 BC that population had risen to 72 million by the end of the period in 500 AD. World population stood previously in 209 million. Nubia crescent of two major regions among the Nile River from Westan to Ethiopian, Upper Nuba sat between the second and the fifth and the sixth cataracts of the Nile, modern day Central Sudan, and the lower Nuba sat between the first and the second contracts, modern day southern Egypt and northern Sudan. Here's the map. In the Nuban region, this map shows the modern day located in Nuba. Nuban history can be traced c. 2000 BCE onward to 1504 AD, when the Nuba was divided between Egypt and the Sultanate and became Arabized. It was the later united within the Ottoman Egypt and the 19th century. The Kingdom of Egypt from 1899 to 1956. This is the code. This looks like this is so old. This is the Egyptian, right? No, it's not. I thought that was the Egyptian. They look like the Egyptian. It's so many dip on depiction of Nubans worshiping. This painting shows Nubans at worship. Nuba and Egypt. Nuba and ancient Egypt is periods both peace and war. What? They have peace and war. That sounds like a confusing topic. Do you want peace and war in the culture? That is confusing. You only need to pick one. If they want war. If you want peace, well, let's be peaceful to all cultures and don't have no more war anymore. Let's love all cultures, no matter what their language speaks like, and what they look like, or what type of food they eat, or what they do. We must love them still. It is believed, based on the rock art, that Nubian rulers in early Egyptian prophets used similar royal symbols. There are often peaceful cultural exchange in corruption and marriages between the two, and the Inca Egyptians did, however, conquer Nubian territory at the various times. Nubans conquered Egypt in the 25th dynasty. Egyptians called the Nubian region Ta City, which means the land of the bow, and reference to Nubian archery skills. around 30, around 35 BCE, a group of the Nubians arose, existing side by side with the nine Turuba in Upper Egypt. Those two groups traded gold, current tools, serpents, stone vessels, pots, and more. Egyptian infiltration in 33 BC may have been helped along the Nubian culture, which was considered Upper Egypt. Nuba was the first mention of by ancient Egypt trading accounts in Nuba was the first mention of the ancient Egypt trading accounts in 23 BCE. Nuba was in the gateway of the riches of Africa, and the goods of the gold increase Nibani, Cooper, Orvi, and animals flowed through it. The 6th dynasty, Nuba was fractured into a group of small kingdoms. The population called the C group may have been made up in Sumerian Mermans during the Egyptian Middle Kingdom, c. 2040 through 640 BC. Egypt began standing into Nuba territory in order to control the trade routes and to build a series of forts along the Nile. This is what they did. See the picture? This was a war. This was the Egyptian War. What? The Egyptian War. Very interesting. I don't think nobody could win that war. The Egyptian War. Not the Egyptian War.
Yes. Come eat.
Oh. This was an interesting topic. Now we got a picture showing the Nubians of this painting, showing the Nubians that they were in a war. Nubians remind me about Egyptian, but this one says the depiction of the battle of the Nubians. This painting shows Ram's two battling Nubians from his war Cherat. The Egyptians called the certain region of the northern modern day Sudan, where ancient Nubians lived. Midjay. This name gradually began in the reference people, not the region. Those who live in his region work in the Egyptian military. who as scouts. Later is the Grecian troops, and finally has allied the Peria military police, the Egyptian Perifos, while the Nubian Origan, especially during the Kushite period, throughout the closely followed the usual Egyptian methods of grooving. In fact, they were seen and saw in themselves culturally the Egyptian. The two cultures were the close at that some scholars seen them as extinguishable. Nubians appear to have been associated into Egyptian culture. Let's see the ancient Nubian culture. Ancient Nubian culture and Egyptian culture. Ancient Nubian culture looks exactly like Egypt. Ancient Nubian culture. Ancient Nubians. So, Nubians right here. This is the Nubian culture. The Nubians. Exactly like Egypt. Ancient Egypt. So I think the Nubians fought Egyptians. Tut. Said it wrong. His name is King Tut. More cultures.
Redwi F waher iteru suire tawet en weresh heru en setenu enahau suini inu enjeru iu kayef em wese het F.
The temple fighting for Nuba's rich culture. Nuba's rich culture. Civilization, Egyptian civilization. So, let's talk about the war that they fought. So, ancient history. Ancient Nubian war. Ancient Nubian war. So let's talk about Nuba. I'm trying to say the Nubian War for Nuba Wikipedia. Nuba was the region along with the Nile River, encompassing the area between Aswan and southern Egypt and Khartoum in central Sudan. It was the seat of one of the earliest civilizations of ancient Africa, with a history that can be traced from the least 25th BC on onward the camera culture, the latter was considered by the new kingdom of Egypt under Thutmose around Thutmose one around 15 BC, 1500 BC, 2500 BC, 1500 BC. Nuba was home to several empires, most patriarchy, my goodness, Pro-Mentileni, the kingdom of Kush, which considered Egypt during the 8th century BC, during the reign of the Puyi, and ruled the country as its 25th dynasty, to the replaced a century later by the native Egyptian 26th dynasty. The collapse of Kush, the collapse of Kush in the 5th century AD. After more than 1,000 years of existence, was precipitated by the invasion by Ethiopia's kingdom of Aksum, and saw the rise of the three Christian kingdoms, Noctia, Marcoria, and Endodia, the last two again lasting for roughly minimum their eventual decline intended not only the partition of Nuba into the northern half considered by the Ethiopian and the southern half by the Sultanate in the 16th century, but also the rapid Islamization and particle Arabianization and of the Nubian people. Nubia was again united under the cavalry of Egypt in the 19th century. Today, the region of Nuba is split between Egypt and Sudan. The primary archaeological science dealing with ancient Nuba is called Nubiology. And here's the tools, the weapons. This is what they use for fighting. This is what they use. This is what they use in a battle when they're getting ready for war. They use weapons to protect themselves from enemies, from their own enemy. The one that's fighting with them is their worst enemy. So let's read. Early settlements sprout in both Upper and Lower Nuba. Egyptians refer to Nuba as the Thai as Thai is a Thai. Te Seti, or the land of the bow. Since the Nubians were known to be expert archers, not archers, modern scholars topically refer to the people from this area as the Agro culture. Fertile farmland, just south, and the third Cataract is known as the pre-Kama culture, and Upper Nuba is as they are the ancestors, the Neolithic people in the Nile Valley, likely from Sudan, as well as the Syria, and there was shared culture with the two areas with that of Egypt during his period. By the 5th millennium BC, the people who inhabited what is now called Nuba participated the Neolithic Revolution. Sumerian rock reliefs do back since that have been thought to the suggestive of the cattle cult. Topical of those seen throughout the parts of Eastern Africa and the Nile Valley, even to this day. Megaliths discovered that Nobita playa are early examples seems to be one of the most first astronomical devices predating a stone surgeons by almost 2,000 years. This complexity absorbed as the Naptia player, and as expressed by different levels of autonomy within the society there, likely form the basis of the structure of both the Neolithic society and Nubita, and the Old Kingdom of Egypt around 35 BC. the second Nubian culture turned to the A group, Aros. It was the contemporary of, and um, I think I think he, I think linguistically and culturally very similar to the palaces in the in Perdaste, Niquidia, and Upper Egypt. The 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 A group people were engaged in the trade with the Egyptians. The trade is testified largely by the large amounts of Egyptian commodities disposed in the graves of the A group people. The imports consisted of gold objects, copper tools, falchions, amulets, and beads, seals, slate, peperites, stone vessels, and a variety of pots. Nubian True. What is this? Nubian Totia, female figure from the Neolithic period, ca. 35 through 31 BCE, Brooklyn Museum. Is that in New York? Is that in New York Museum? I'm not sure, man. If it's in Brooklyn, around 3 BC, there is evidence of a United Kingdom as shown by the finds at I'll say that. Crystal, wow. Oh my god. Can't even pronounce this word. That maintain successful reactions, both cultural and genetic. With the culture in Nubian, culture of Niquadan, Upper Egypt. The Nubian culture may have been contributed to the infiltration in the Nile Valley. Toby Wixasign, based on the work of Bruce Williams in the 1980s, wrote that the white crown associated in the historic times with Upper Egypt, the first 8 tested later than the red crown, but directly associated with the ruler somewhat earlier. The earliest known depiction of the white crown is on the Sumerian instant burner of Semiti and Stesso cemetery that Shakespeare in Lower Nubia, based on a 1998 based on 1998 excavation report. Jane Roy has written at the time of Williams' argument, the Crystal Cemetery in the Royal Ethnography found there was dated not and then Naquida 3A period, thus interdating royal cemeteries in Egypt of the Naquida 3B phase. New evidence from the Obidas, however, particularly the excavation of cemetery U in the tomb UJ dating to Naquida 3A has shown that the economy appears earlier in Egypt. I'm pretty sure these people could not survive. They tried to survive. There were a lot of armies and their allies. Their leaders and their allies fighting with another enemy that's having beef with them. A lot of beef and a lot of conflict. This was a long time ago, guys, for how the war started. their armies and its allies. You can see why the horse looks like a Native American. They have the feathers on the horse's head every time. In ancient Egypt, like the horses look like they're Native Americans. Just in the probably in the drawing, like in the art picture. The feathers on their heads. When it comes to the horse, when it comes to horses in Egypt, I'm sure that those horses look like Native Americans. It says right here, was ancient Egypt peaceful? And ancient Egypt was considered to be the one of the most peaceful and ancient civilizations. So peaceful, in fact, that they did not have proper army until the invasion of the Hyksos during the 15th century. Ancient Egypt is indeed ancient. So I think in ancient times there were a lot of horrible wars. I'm thinking people could not survive in this conflict. Lots of wars back in centuries. I mean, lots of them. It's about the Peloponnesian War, but lots of these wars back in century BC. Will archaeologists will learn more? Archaeologists. The Wikipedia. Did I read this before about the Egyptian warriors? I think I wrote that, or I think I read that before. So now it's like, let's see the video of what Egypt looked like. Interesting and to see.
1458 BC. A rebel warlord challenges the might of Egypt. The two greatest armies the ancient world has ever seen are ready to fight. The fate of Egypt lies in the hands of its young pharaoh, who has never before seen battle. If the rebels win, Egyptian civilization will crumble. This is a true story. The chronicle of this epic struggle was carved into the stone walls of the Temple of Karnak over 3,500 years ago. It records how a pampered prince was transformed by war and turned his kingdom into an empire. He became Egypt's greatest warrior pharaoh, Thutmose III.
It was a mummy. Ancient Egyptians.
For a generation, Egypt's 3 million people have lived in peace and prosperity. Most are farmers and fishermen, living along the fertile banks of the River Nile. Ahmose is a peasant farmer whose family worked this land together. Their life follows the changing seasons. Egyptians marry young. Ahmose's wife is just 16. They expect that one day their children will take over from them and work the fields. But Ahmose's life is about to change. The sacred ibis are an omen of danger. 200 miles away in the capital, Thebes, Queen Hatshepsut, the female pharaoh, is dead. While the country mourns, Egypt's enemies are gathering. Of Kadesh, an embittered Syrian warlord, is whipping up revolt among the tribes of the north. For decades, they have struggled under the yoke of Egypt and her imperial ambitions. With 150 mutinous princes behind him, Kadesh plans to invade Egypt and crush the power of the pharaohs. Egypt is vulnerable. What she needs now is a leader of unswerving courage and tested military skill. But the new pharaoh is Thutmose III. For 20 years, this princeling has been kept from power by his stepmother, Queen Hatshepsut. He has been pampered and indulged, untroubled by the affairs of state. But now he is a king, with a nation to lead.
Where's King Tut?
To the Egyptians, he's a living god, his body a sacred object. But to his enemies, he's simply a young king with no experience of battle and a feeble hold on power. Thutmose comes from a long line of warriors. A century and a half ago, the founders of his dynasty expelled the ancestors of the Prince of Kadesh from northern Egypt. Syrians and Egyptians have struggled for supremacy ever since. But none of Thutmose's ancestors ever faced a military challenge as great as the one that confronts him now. Three and a half thousand years later, this is modern Luxor and the ruins of Thutmose's temple of Karnak. In a narrow passageway, on a wall few visitors will ever notice, there's a long inscription in Egyptian hieroglyphs, carved on the orders of Thutmose himself. It tells the story of his war against the Syrians, which begins in the winter of 1458 BC. Just weeks after taking the throne, Thutmose and his entourage moved from Thebes to the fortress of Jaru, 500 miles north. Jaru is on the Syrian border. It's Egypt's largest garrison and the gateway to the Middle East. The young Thutmose locks himself away with his generals. Yehuti and Jamenej are hardened soldiers, skeptical of the young pharaoh's ability to lead. They have just a few weeks to devise a strategy to defend Egypt's borders. Recording every word of their deliberations is a fourth man, not a soldier, but a scribe, named Jeleni. He's been called the world's first war correspondent, and it's his words in ancient Egyptian that are carved into the temple wall at Karnak. The Prince of Kadesh and his allies have gathered at the city of Megiddo, near present-day Jerusalem. Megiddo is now the nerve center of the revolt. Kadesh has persuaded the northern warlords to provide him with every fighting man they have. Under his command is the largest Syrian army ever assembled. He's determined that this time Egypt will fall.
Megiddo. Megiddo?
The intelligence is worse than Thutmose expects, far worse. Megiddo is just 150 miles from Egypt's borders, and Thutmose is heavily outnumbered. He needs more men.
The civilization.
Conscription is nothing new in Egypt. For centuries, peasants have been taken from the land to build canals, temples, and pyramids. But Ahmose is destined for something different. The army.
لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله.
لا ما يمشيش.
لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله.
لا ما تمشيش.
ما قدرش نخلي خويا، ما قدرش
ما
نخلي.
تخلينيش ما تمشيش. وحنا وحياتنا. لا خوتي
صافي ما غاديش نمشي.
Akmose knows he may never see his wife and home again. The eye of the hawk god Horus is a magic charm that wards off danger. Every Egyptian is now touched by the threat to the kingdom. Akmose is just one of thousands of young men herded north to possible death in the struggle against the Syrians. In February 1458 BC, Akmose and his fellow conscripts reached the fortress of Jaru. The pharaoh is mustering every fighting man in the kingdom to throw against the Syrian rebels who plan to invade Egypt. Akmose is a peasant farmer who has never left his village before. He is now going to be made part of the most sophisticated army the world has ever seen. Quartermasters marshal food, weapons, and clothing supplies. Every day, an army of 10,000 men consumes 14 tons of grain and 95,000 liters of water. The wealth of Egypt pours into the war effort. What makes the Egyptian army so formidable is these men. An elite corps of professional soldiers, Nubians from the south, in what is today's Sudan. Nakht joined the pharaoh's army 3 years ago, along with 5 men from his village. His ambition is to rise through the ranks, and he is likely to succeed. Nubians are admired by the Egyptians for their courage, strength, and skills in combat. For men like Nakht, the coming war is an opportunity. There's booty to be had and glory to be won. Other Nubians have become generals and risen to the top of Egyptian society. The most Akmose can hope for is to get back to his home alive. Raw recruits must be made part of the military machine. This is the job of Egypt's officer class. Yamunej and Jehuti are 2 of the pharaoh's most trusted generals. They come from very different backgrounds. Jehuti is an aristocrat. Yamunej rose through the ranks. Officers will be equipped with the latest military technology. Ivory-tipped arrows, bows made of imported birch or elm, bound with glue made from fish bladders, as well as the most radical innovation of all, the chariot, a lightweight war machine that brings speed and surprise to the battlefield. The lower ranks will use more basic weaponry, axes, knives, and spears. Nacht is putting the new recruits through their paces. Wrestling is the Egyptians' favorite sport, and in the army, it's a useful test of manhood.
So, wrestling is Egyptians' favorite sport. Also, I think the Greeks do it too. The Greeks wrestle.
Mose has made the grade, and the Pharaoh's army is in fighting spirit. By April, the Prince of Kadesh is preparing to move the coalition's 10,000 men from Megiddo towards the Egyptian border. Thutmose, the inexperienced leader, has grown in confidence. He won't wait for the Syrians to invade. He won't fight a defensive war. He will invade Syria and crush the rebels at Megiddo. The army will march tomorrow. This momentous decision is recorded by Geneni in his chronicle, inscribed on the walls of the Temple of Karnak. But to reach Megiddo, the army faces a grueling march of 200 miles across the deserts of Sinai and Gaza. Geneni the scribe is part of the campaign. He's here to record the pharaoh's exploits and guarantee Thutmose a place in history. Geneni is not interested in the hardships of foot soldiers, such as Ahmose and Nacht. But this 1,000-year-old papyrus, discovered in a tomb in Luxor, tells us what life was like for the ordinary soldier on campaign in Syria.
ستاهم إرخارو بيصرف إفسو بنحبسو ومتبتو إناث مشعو إرقاي ومتاسو زويت محر خمت بنهورو إيوشانس ميداباي حاباي زد خاتف وموحيو إخامف تجاتف حاف قانف باتف سقابي ومشعو.
At first, the army makes rapid progress.
Wow. Fast progress.
In the first 10 days, it covers 150 miles.
The whole village with the bicycle trail.
Then the heat takes its toll. The pace slows from 15 miles a day to 5.
Trees that never become looking like an island. Or just ancient civilization on a huge island.
Three weeks later, and the troops have crossed the Gaza Strip and the hills of Canaan. They're camped deep inside Syrian territory, at Yaham, in present-day Israel. The soldiers are exhausted, and their thoughts turn towards home. Ahmose, like every Egyptian, is terrified of dying outside his native land. If he's buried in foreign soil, without his family to tend his grave, he'll have no chance of reaching the afterlife. If he dies here, his spirit will be cast into oblivion, and he'll face a second death. And perhaps Thutmose, despite his status as a god, is troubled by the very same thought. He's just 30 miles from Megiddo and the rebel army, and now he must make a decision. The choice he makes will dictate his future and the fate of Egypt.
To keep it in their job. Keep the heart and the brain. That's life in Egypt.
The young pharaoh now faces the most important decision of his campaign. Geneni recalls the discussion with his generals. For the first time in his account, we hear Thutmose's own words as he spoke them 3,500 years ago. Surprise is the key. Reach Megiddo quickly, catch the Syrians unawares, and they could crush the rebellion in a single strike. From their camp at Yaham, there are 3 routes to Megiddo. Through Yoknayam, north of Mount Carmel. South through Tanakh, approaching Megiddo from the southeast. These are the safest routes, but also the longest. There is a third approach, the Aruna Pass, a narrow gorge that snakes through the mountains. It's the most direct and the most dangerous. For hours on end, the army would be exposed to ambush. They'll take the Aruna Pass. The generals think the young pharaoh is wrong. Janeni records their words.
سمي أخ شمت حمتين بين إنتي وبين الحنس يوتو حرسمت أجو خيرو إمو أغا حربيبون إن يتحية إمو إرحاها يونا إن بخوي أغيا إم أرونا
ونخناي مروي إرا حسو تيوتي أمون يواتش حرمين جنبه أرونا إميشة انت ليبا في موجة حرناء المجان جودا جن مك كاسن امنا خير وبودرا إن يحمث وجهر قيمة جن يوفا السنة جنان كاسن
وين الباك إنسان نبخ
أمو إن حيمو مجن ناخد نجوان جن نمتخد
يلا نشوف راسك
المهم
And has Tuthmosis signed the army's death warrant? On the 14th of May, Tuthmosis leads his army into the Aruna Pass. "10,000 men must march in single file through the narrow gorge, utterly exposed. For 12 hours, they are open to attack from above.
السلامة وصافي كتشرى مطلوب
قاعد ناجس لي بيرو ترى دخل ندف
الله يحفظك ما قد سلك فرعون
But the Syrian ambush never comes.
طريق القانون
Kadesh has been outwitted. He expected to ambush the Egyptians on the southern route to Megiddo. Now his troops are in the wrong place. All he can do is scramble back to Megiddo. Six hours later, Tuthmosis is within sight of the Syrian stronghold.
ورونم نخاسو محتج تبوه إخوانف محبو إن ديمي خا بامح المجدو
Tomorrow, for the first time, Tuthmosis will lead his men into battle. Here at Karnak is Jineni's eyewitness account of the final minutes before the Battle of Megiddo. It's the 15th of May, 1458 BC.
رونتز يوت خمي تبشو موسوس يوت وا خاتمسو تبدوا ازت ريدي امهوني متشا اتزرف سش وتزا حمف هوررت نتزا سابو يمنو اف لوارا خت مهور جمع نب ير خت
وروني مرا
Thutmose anoints his peasant soldiers with sacred perfume to bring down the gods' blessings on them in battle. The real test has come. Jeneni describes the Egyptian positions. Kadesh too is ready. Egyptians and Syrians face each other at last.
Egyptian. This is how they fought back then, guys. They fought for many years. They kept on fighting for many years, many centuries.
As Syrian bodies drop around him, Kadesh's dreams of conquest evaporate. All Kadesh can do is save his own skin. The Egyptians have victory within their grasp, but they let it slip through their fingers. Instead of attacking the city, they loot the bodies of their Syrian enemies. It's the common soldier's chance to enrich himself, but it's a military disaster. Jeneni's account condemns the foot soldiers for their greed.
مكتي امتعت أحيان حكسس متسر ورد سنبو هيتس إروي محك سكو سنسدزل امسدزتسي نميرمو امكحشنو متجناخت نحمف هيهوب خيتو إيرو.
The Egyptians measure their success by collecting severed hands. But this is not yet a victory.
أنت شوف صد معايا واحد جوج
لب نلقى نيونيا يبرم لب
شوف
أحمد ما يدول
Has the greed of the foot soldiers been the Egyptians' undoing? The Pharaoh's generals are in disgrace.
They killed their enemies.
It was their job to take Megiddo. Instead, they stood by while their own soldiers plundered.
كنا فرحان دابا حكم درتوها زوينة دابا رنوينا منيو نخت مكرت يعني انتو مكراه وروني خاسو نحتي محتيانف رنتت كابا مح المجدو خرجوا عليا
Thutmose will now have to starve the Syrians into submission. No one knows how many Egyptians fell at the Battle of Megiddo. The Egyptian military documents keep quiet on the subject of their own casualties. What we do know is how Egyptian surgeons treated the wounded.
Wounded.
This papyrus is the world's oldest medical textbook.
World's oldest. Wow, man.
It gives detailed descriptions of treatments for battle injuries.
It's just so old, it's like it's all torn up.
Raw meat, with its
Still
natural
eat it,
blood-clotting agents, is used on flesh
Might be all
wounds.
torn up.
Burns are treated with a mixture of gum, ram's hair, and the milk of a breastfeeding woman.
The wounds.
But despite the doctor's best efforts, most of the wounded in this field
Ancient
hospital will
times.
die from
Ancient.
infection within days.
In ancient times. People get injured, people get killed.
Another
war.
ancient text sums up the fate of many Egyptian soldiers.
توتو حيرتت
The
بيسا
only way they're gonna survive
بمونح
is when they
الميقا
have blood.
كشيري توتو حرص
If they
خابرف
lose a lot of blood,
النحمف ومقاني الموت صابرف
that's
بروراني
infection.
إيو قاسم وشواص
Infection.
أحموزي
ta mo ti gene nte na ja ko nya ding ci gen ñu ñu dina jëf jappal Ahmoze 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 Ahmoze
For 7 months, Thutmose holds Megiddo under siege. Finally, in December 1458 BC, a symbol of surrender. These are the children of the Syrian warlords, offered to Thutmose in a gesture of submission. The Syrian revolt is over. The children will be taken to Egypt as hostages and killed if their families rebel again. Some are destined to become puppet rulers within Thutmose's new Egyptian empire. Thutmose returns to his capital, Thebes, in triumph. No one doubts his strength now.
Chef inuruba wa amun ikhansunem ezet urunem he uwe hebe khiar enusen emhet nebu shishe mefkat shishe roket menemet awat nat metjane hame watket musa khiar enu mkhentet.
The final words of Jineni's chronicle are those of the defeated enemy, the Prince of Kadesh.
نيهو حمان إريبونا نهمو خباغا ونخجات باينا إن أهاون نئونا ديال خنان خاو امررت.
Over the next 20 years, the pharaoh Thutmose III fought and won another 17 campaigns. At the time of his death and mummification in 1425 BC, he had imposed Egyptian rule across an empire that extended, he claimed, as far as the circuit of the sun. Djeneni's eyewitness account of the Battle of Megiddo set a standard of military heroism for every pharaoh who followed. As Thutmose intended, he is still remembered today as Egypt's greatest warrior pharaoh.
Ancient Egyptians continues at the same time next Thursday. Details coming up. For adults or children, these highly illustrated titles are available in the shops now. To order, call 0870 1234 344 or click onto channel4.com/.
So that's what you guys watch. Hopefully you enjoyed that video. So we'll talk about more about the Egyptian and how they were living and the fighting a lot of their enemies. So it seems that the Egyptian war was taking place in their village. With the war, chariots and weapons in ancient Egypt, the Egyptian army had bronze-tipped spears and shields made of wood and ox hide. They also had highly trained archers who used bows and arrows. Egyptian soldiers do not seem to have worn armor, maybe because it's too hot. Yes, the desert of Africa. They never wear armor. It's the desert of Africa. And the desert is always hot. So guys, hopefully you enjoy this philosophy of ancient times. We'll see you in the next philosophy by Johnny Nobise History on the Johnny Nobise History channel. Goodbye guys. Have a safe day and New Year.